I'm Connor Vance, 34 years old, and 2 months ago, on Thanksgiving night, in front of 20 relatives, my parents handed my older brother a $13,000 cruise package and gave me a crumpled $2 lottery ticket with a mocking smile. They didn't know that little ticket would change everything. $100 million changes everything, but not in the way you might think. Before I tell you how I brought my entire family to their knees, please let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far this story travels. Now let me take you back to that night. The night the fuse was lit. The air in my parents' house always smelled like expensive potpourri and judgment. It was a sprawling colonial in the suburbs of Connecticut, the kind of house bought to impress neighbors rather than to live in. I pulled my pickup truck into the driveway, parking far to the side so I wouldn't block the view of the new arrival. A sleek, silver Porsche 911. It wasn't my dad's. It belonged to Julian, or at least the lease did. My brother Julian is 2 years older than me. He's the golden child, the real estate developer, the guy who wears suits that cost more than my first car. I'm a landscape architect. I spend my days with dirt under my fingernails, designing gardens and green spaces. To my parents, Robert and Linda Vance, I was basically a glorified gardener. I walked into the kitchen, carrying a homemade pecan pie. My mother didn't even turn around from the oven. "Put it on the side counter, Connor," she said, her voice tight. "And please tell me you changed your boots. I just had the floors done." "I'm wearing dress shoes, Mom," I said, looking down at my polished loafers. "Good. Julian is in the living room holding court. Go say hello." That was the dynamic. Julian held court. I paid homage. I walked into the living room. My father was pouring scotch, laughing at something Julian was saying. Julian sat on the leather sofa, arm draped around his wife, Elena. Elena looked tired. She always looked tired these days, her smile thin and brittle, like old parchment. "There he is," Julian boomed, raising his glass. "The man of the earth. How's the grass-cutting business, little brother?" "Business is good, Julian," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We just landed the contract for the new municipal park downtown." "Cute," my father muttered, handing Julian a refill. Julian just closed a deal on a 12-story complex in Miami. "Now that is building something, Connor." I took a breath. I was used to this. 34 years of this. I saw my grandma Rose sitting in her wheelchair in the corner. She was 90, frail, and mostly silent these days. My parents treated her like a piece of furniture that they couldn't get rid of because of sentimental value. But when I caught her eye, she winked. It was a small, sharp movement. She was the only reason I still came to these dinners. Dinner was a production. My mother critiqued everything, from the turkey to the way my aunt passed the gravy. But the main event was always dessert. Not because of the pie, but because that's when the big gifts were exchanged. It was a Vance family tradition to show off wealth during the holidays. My father stood up, tapping his fork against his crystal wine glass. "Attention, everyone," he announced. "Linda and I wanted to do something special this year. It's been a hard year for business, but family comes first." He gestured to Julian. "Son, step up here." My mother handed Julian a thick, gold envelope. Julian tore it open, feigning surprise. He pulled out a glossy brochure and a set of tickets. "No way," Julian gasped. "The Royal Caribbean Suite package? For 2 weeks. First class." My dad beamed. "For you, Elena, and us. We all need a break. We sail mid-December." The room erupted. My aunts and uncles clapped. Julian hugged my mom. $13,000? Julian whispered loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You guys are insane. This is amazing." Elena smiled, but her eyes didn't crinkle. She looked like she was trying to calculate something in her head. Probably how she was going to survive 2 weeks trapped on a boat with my parents. Then the room got quiet. My father turned to me. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a shark that had already eaten. "And Connor," he said, "we didn't forget you." My mother walked over and pressed a small, thin envelope into my hand. It wasn't gold. It was plain white. "Open it," she urged. I opened it. Inside was a single scratch-off lottery ticket. Mega Millions. Price $2. It was slightly crumpled, like it had been sitting in the bottom of a purse for a week. "This is all that's appropriate for your situation, Connor," my mother said, her voice carrying that sickly sweet tone she used when she wanted to be cruel in public. "We figured you need the luck more than we do," my father added, chuckling. "Maybe you'll win $5. Buy yourself a new shovel." Julian laughed. It was a bark of a laugh. "Luck's a long shot when you don't have the brains to back it up. Right, little brother?" The guests laughed. A ripple of amusement went through the dining room. I stood there, holding the $2 ticket while my brother held a $13,000 vacation. My face burned, not with embarrassment, but with a cold, hard anger that settled deep in my gut. I looked at the ticket. Then I looked at my parents. "Thank you," I said. My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "I appreciate the thought." "Oh, don't be so dramatic." My mother waved her hand. "It's all in good fun. Sit down." I sat. But before I did, I felt a cold, bony hand grab my wrist. Grandma rose. She had wheeled herself up to the table's edge. "That's enough," she said. Her voice was thin, shaking with age, but the authority in it stopped the laughter instantly. "You cannot treat him this way. Not in front of everyone." "Mother, please," my dad snapped. "You're confusing things again. It's a joke. Connor knows it's a joke." "I am not confused, Gerald," Grandma Rose said. She looked at me. Her eyes were watery, blue, and incredibly sharp. "They don't see you, Connor. They never have." My mother was already moving. "Okay, that's it. Grandma is tired. Too much excitement. Come on, Mother. Let's get you to the guest room." "I am not tired," Grandma protested, but my mother was stronger. She gripped the handles of the wheelchair and began to turn it. As she was being wheeled away, Grandma Rose twisted her body, fighting the momentum. She looked right at me. She mouthed words I couldn't hear over the scraping of chairs. I leaned in. She locked eyes with me and whispered, loud enough for only me to hear, "Call Thomas Smith this week. The blue folder." "What?" I asked, confused. Thomas Smith was the family attorney, but he had retired years ago, or so I thought. "Don't let them take the house," she hissed. Then my mother pushed her through the doorway and she was gone. I sat there, the crumpled lottery ticket in my fist. The dinner conversation resumed around me. Julian was bragging about the amenities on the ship. My father was talking about interest rates. Nobody looked at me. I was invisible again. But my grandmother's words were ringing in my ears like a fire alarm. "Call Thomas Smith. Don't let them take the house." Grandma Rose's house was the only place I had ever felt safe as a kid. It was a beautiful old Victorian on the edge of town with a massive garden that I had helped her tend since I was 5. My parents had moved Grandma into their place a year ago, claiming she needed better care, and the old house had been sitting empty. Why would anyone take the house? It was paid off decades ago. I looked at the lottery ticket again. I almost crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. But something stopped me. Maybe it was spite. Maybe it was just habit. I folded it carefully and put it in the inside pocket of my jacket. I didn't know it then, but I was carrying a nuclear bomb in my pocket. And the fuse had just been lit. The dinner dragged on for another 2 hours. I played my part perfectly. I nodded at my father's lectures about ambition. I smiled at Julian's condescending advice about how I should scale my little gardening business. I was the dutiful son, the punching bag they needed to feel superior. But my mind was racing. Don't let them take the house. By 10 p.m., most of the guests had left. Julian and Elena were staying over in the main guest suite. My parents were at the door saying goodbye to Uncle Bob. I told them I was going to use the restroom, but I didn't. I slipped down the hallway toward my father's home office. My heart was hammering against my ribs. This felt wrong. I was 34 years old, sneaking around my parents' house like a teenager. But Grandma Rose wasn't senile. I knew that. My parents liked to tell everyone she was losing her mind, but every time I spoke to her, she was sharp as a tack. If she said something was wrong, something was wrong. The office door was unlatched. I pushed it open and slipped inside, leaving the lights off. The moonlight from the window was enough. My father was old school. He kept paper records of everything. Blue folder, I whispered to myself. I went to the filing cabinet. Locked, of course. I looked at the desk. Piles of papers were scattered across the mahogany surface. That was unlike my dad. He was usually fastidious. I turned on the flashlight on my phone, keeping the beam low. Bills. Overdue notices. A letter from a collection agency regarding a credit card I didn't recognize. Then I saw it. Not a blue folder, but a document peeking out from under a stack of car magazines. It was a loan agreement. I pulled it out. My breath hitched in my throat. It was a private loan agreement. High-risk lender. The kind of place that operates out of a strip mall and charges interest rates that border on illegal. The amount, $180,000. The borrower, Gerald Vance. Co-signer, Julian Vance. I stared at the numbers. Why did my father need $180,000? And why was Julian, the millionaire real estate mogul, co-signing a high-interest loan instead of just lending Dad the money? I kept digging. Under the loan agreement was the collateral document. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Property address, 42 Oak Hill Lane. Grandma Rose's house. They had leveraged her house. The house my grandfather built. The house she promised would never be sold. I flipped to the signature page. There, at the bottom, was Rose Mitchell. But the signature, it was wrong. It was shaky, jagged. It looked like the handwriting of someone who couldn't hold a pen steady. I looked at the date next to the signature. June 15th. My blood ran cold. I remembered June 15th. That was the week Grandma fell and broke her hip. She was in the hospital, heavily sedated on painkillers. She didn't even know what day it was. You bastards, I whispered into the dark room. They had made her sign away her home while she was high on morphine. Or worse, they had forged it. Suddenly, I heard heavy footsteps in the hallway. My father's cough. I shoved the papers back exactly how I found them, killed my flashlight, and ducked behind the heavy velvet curtains just as the door opened. My father walked in, followed by Julian. I'm telling you, Dad, the interest is eating us alive. Julian's voice was hushed, urgent. We need to make a payment before we leave for the cruise. I don't have it, Julian, my father snapped. He sounded tired, older than he looked at dinner. I liquidated the IRA. The shop is barely breaking even. You said this Miami deal would pay out by November. It's delayed. Just a few weeks, Julian said, his voice smooth, practicing the lie. Once that closes, I'll pay off the loan and the house is safe. Grandma will never know. She suspects, Dad said. She was asking about the deed last week. She's senile, Julian scoffed. Who cares what she thinks? Look, enjoy the cruise. I'll handle the lender. I just need you to cover the minimums on the credit cards so they don't get declined while we're in the Caribbean. I'm tapping out my limit for this trip, Julian. This was supposed to be a celebration of your success. It is. My success is coming. I just have a cash flow problem. It happens to all developers. Just keep Connor out of it. If that loser finds out we leveraged the house. Connor, Dad laughed. A cruel, dismissive sound. Connor wouldn't understand a balance sheet if it hit him in the face. He's busy playing in the dirt. Don't worry about him. They left the room, closing the door behind them. I waited 5 minutes, shaking with rage. I wasn't just the gardener. I ran a successful landscape architecture firm. I managed budgets, payroll for 15 employees, and complex contracts. But to them, I was just a child playing in the mud. They stole Grandma's house. Julian was broke. My dad was broke. And they were going on a $13,000 cruise to pretend everything was fine. I slipped out of the office, went back to the bathroom, flushed the toilet for cover, and walked back out. Leaving so soon? My mother asked as I put on my coat. Yeah, got an early start tomorrow, I said. I looked at Julian. He was swirling his scotch, looking smug. Enjoy the cruise, Julian. Oh, I will, he smirked. Try not to kill any plants while I'm gone. I drove home in silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I went into my apartment. A modest, clean place filled with plants and drafting tables. I sat at my kitchen island and pulled out the crumpled lottery ticket. I had forgotten about it until that moment. I looked at it. $2. The price of my dignity, apparently. Let's see what I'm worth, I muttered. I pulled up the Mega Millions app on my phone. I didn't expect anything. I just needed a distraction from the image of my father and brother conspiring to steal from an old woman. I scanned the ticket. The little wheel on the screen spun. Winning numbers: 4 to 11, 18 to 22, 39. Mega Ball, 7. My ticket. Line A, 4 to 11, 18 to 22, 39. Mega Ball, 7. I blinked. I refreshed the app. Congratulations. I sat there. The silence in my apartment was deafening. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up and down. I felt numb. I went to the official website on my laptop. Checked the numbers again. Checked the date. It was real. One winner. Connecticut. Estimated cash option: $100 million. After taxes, roughly $60 million. I sat back in my chair. $60 million. 10 minutes ago, I was the loser son who couldn't understand a balance sheet. Now, I had enough money to buy Julian's entire fake life 10 times over. But the joy didn't come. Instead, a cold, strategic clarity washed over me. If I told them, they would swarm. My mother would suddenly love me. My father would need help with his business. Julian would have a guaranteed investment opportunity. They would take it all just like they took Grandma's house. No, I said aloud. I looked at the ticket. This wasn't a windfall. This was a weapon. Grandma Rose said to call Thomas Smith. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called my operations manager, Sarah, and told her I had a family emergency. Sarah was more than an assistant. She was my best friend, my confidant, the only person aside from Grandma who believed in me. Is everything okay, Connor? She asked. No, I said, but it's going to be. I drove to the nursing home where Thomas Smith's wife lived. I knew he visited her every morning. I found him in the lobby, reading a newspaper. He was in his 70s, wearing a tweed suit that had seen better days, but his eyes were sharp. Mr. Smith, I asked. He looked up. Connor Vance. You look just like your grandfather. Grandma told me to call you. She mentioned a blue folder. Thomas folded his paper. He looked around the lobby, then lowered his voice. I've been waiting for you to come to your senses. Your grandmother has been worried sick. About the house? About everything. Come with me. We went to his small satellite office down the street. He locked the door and pulled a blue folder from his safe. Your grandmother didn't trust your father, Thomas said bluntly. Or your brother. She knew they were eyeing her property years ago. So, 10 years ago, she set up a trust. A trust? Yes, a small one. About $500,000. It was money your grandfather hid away. She wanted you to have it when you turned 35. But given the circumstances, they mortgaged the house, Thomas. I saw the papers. Thomas sighed, rubbing his temples. I suspected. That deed transfer. If she was medicated, it's contestable. But fighting it takes money, Connor. Lawyers, court fees. Your father and brother will drag it out. Do you have the resources for a war? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the crumpled lottery ticket. I placed it on his mahogany desk. Thomas, I said, I don't just have resources. I have nuclear codes. Thomas picked up the ticket. He looked at the numbers. He looked at me. His eyes widened behind his glasses. Is this? Verified. 100 million. Thomas Smith, a man who had practiced law for 50 years, sat back in his chair and let out a long, low whistle. Well then, he smiled, a wolfish grin appearing on his face. It seems the tables have turned. What do you want to do, Connor? I want to save Grandma's house, I said. And I want to make sure they can never hurt her again. We can do that, Thomas said. But first, we need to secure this ticket. An LLC. Anonymous claim. No press conferences. Agreed. And there's something else you should know, Thomas said, opening the blue folder. About your brother. What about him? Your Aunt Marlene came to see me last week. She didn't want to tell you because she didn't want to cause a scene. But Julian isn't just broke. He's reckless. Thomas slid a photo across the desk. It was blurry, taken on a cell phone, but clear enough. Julian, sitting at an outdoor cafe, kissing a woman who was definitely not Elena. Her name is Chloe, Thomas said. She's 22. Julian has been funneling money from your father's business accounts to pay for her apartment in the city. That's why your dad is broke. He's been covering Julian's embezzlement to keep him out of jail. I stared at the photo. The rage I felt last night was nothing compared to this. My dad wasn't just a victim of Julian's bad business. He was an accomplice. He was bankrupting himself and stealing from his own mother to cover up the fact that his golden child was a thief and a cheater. And Elena, poor Elena. Okay, I said, standing up. Let's get to work. What's the plan? Thomas asked. They leave for the cruise in 3 days, I said. When they get back, I want them to come home to a different world. The next 3 days were a blur of adrenaline and subterfuge. I was living a double life. By day, I was Connor the landscape architect, checking on job sites, nodding politely when my mom called to remind me to water her hydrangeas while they were gone. By night, I was Connor the multimillionaire, plotting the dismantling of my family's financial house of cards. Thomas set up the LLC. We named it Green Thumb Holdings. A little inside joke. The lottery commission confirmed the win. The money would hit the corporate account within the week. But I needed more intel. I needed to talk to Aunt Marlene. Marlene was my mom's younger sister. She was the black sheep because she married a plumber and lived in a modest ranch house, refusing to play the Vance status games. I called her and asked to meet at a diner on the edge of town, somewhere my parents wouldn't be caught dead. Marlene looked nervous. She kept stirring her coffee, her spoon clinking against the ceramic mug. You talked to Thomas? She asked. I did. He showed me the photo. Marlene let out a shaky breath. Oh, Connor, I didn't want you to find out like that. But I couldn't tell Linda. She worships Julian. If I told her Julian was stealing and cheating, she'd accuse me of being jealous. I know, Aunt Marlene, but I need details. Thomas said Julian is funneling money. It's worse than that, she whispered. My husband, Dave. He did some work on Julian's luxury condos last month. He said the site is a ghost town. No materials, no workers, just a foundation. Julian has been taking deposits from investors and spending it. It's a Ponzi scheme, Connor. And your father, he's trying to plug the holes with his own money. The loan, I realized. The $180,000 against Grandma's house. It was to pay off an investor who wanted out. Probably, Marlene nodded. And there's more. I overheard Julian on the phone at the anniversary party. He told that girl, Chloe, that he was waiting for the old hag to kick the bucket so he could sell the house and clear his debts. My hand gripped my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. He said that? About Grandma? He did. And he said he's already drafted divorce papers for Elena. He's just waiting until after the cruise so he can stick her with half the debt. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about protecting the vulnerable. Elena was innocent in this. Grandma was a victim. Thank you, Marlene, I said. You've been amazing. What are you going to do? She asked, looking fearful. You can't fight them, Connor. They'll crush you. Julian knows people. I reached across the table and took her hand. Aunt Marlene, do you trust me? Of course I do. You're the only good one in that bunch. Then trust me when I say this. They aren't going to crush anyone. Not anymore. I didn't tell her about the money. Not yet. The fewer people who knew, the better. The day before the cruise, I went to my parents' house. I had to play the part one last time. The driveway was chaos. Suitcases everywhere. Julian was shouting at a taxi driver on the phone. My mom was running around listing chores for me. Water the hydrangeas every other day. Bring in the mail. Don't let the alarm go off. I got it, Mom, I said. Julian walked out wearing a linen suit and sunglasses. Hey, Connor, make sure you check the oil in Dad's car while we're gone. I borrowed it last week and it was making a noise. You borrowed Dad's sedan? What's wrong with the Porsche? Shop, he lied smoothly. Routine maintenance. I knew the truth. He was behind on the lease payments. He was hiding the car so it wouldn't get repossessed while he was gone. Have a safe trip, I said. My dad clapped me on the shoulder. It was a heavy, patronizing hand. Try to make something of yourself while we're gone, son. Maybe pick up some extra shifts. I'll do my best, Dad. I watched the limo pull away, taking them to the airport. As soon as the taillights disappeared around the corner, I stopped waving. My posture straightened. I pulled out my phone and dialed Thomas. They're gone, I said. Execute phase 1. Copy that, Thomas said. The funds cleared this morning, Connor. You are officially liquid. Good. Contact the lender holding the note on Grandma's house. I want to buy the debt. Connor, usually we negotiate. No negotiation. I want to buy the note. Full price plus a premium if they transfer it today. I want to be the one holding the lien on that house. Understood. Green Thumb Holdings will be the new lien holder by end of day. What about the credit cards? Buy those too. Dad's business debt, Julian's personal loans. Anything that is in default or close to it. I want to own every cent they owe. You realize this is going to cost you about $400,000 up front? Do it. I hung up and walked to my truck. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the nursing home. Grandma Rose was sitting by the window, looking at the parking lot. When she saw me, her face lit up. Did they leave? She asked. They left, Grandma. Good riddance, she huffed. Did you call Thomas? I did. And Grandma, we need to talk. I sat down and held her hand. I told her everything. Not about the lottery, not yet, but about the fact that I knew about the house, the loan, and Julian's scheme. I knew it, she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I tried to tell your father. He wouldn't listen. He thinks the sun shines out of Julian's. She trailed off. Connor, I don't want to lose my home. Your grandfather built that porch with his own hands. You're not going to lose it, I promised. In fact, I'm going to start renovations next week. Renovations? With what money? I smiled. Let's just say I finally got some luck to go with my brains. She looked at me, studying my face. She saw the confidence there, something that had been missing for a long time. You look different, she said. I feel different. That night, I sat in my office with Sarah, my assistant. We were going over the war room board. Okay, Sarah said, pinning a printout of a bank statement to the wall. So, Julian owes $60,000 to this contractor, $40,000 to the car leasing company, and apparently, he hasn't paid the taxes on his condo in 2 years. And Dad, your dad is in deep. He leveraged the auto shop to pay Julian's bail bond last year? Did you know Julian was arrested? No, I said, shocked. What for? DUI and property damage in Miami. Dad paid $20,000 to make it go away and keep it out of the papers. Unbelievable. So, Sarah said, stepping back, you own their debt. You own the mortgage on Grandma's house. What's the end game, Connor? The end game is freedom, I said. For me, for Grandma, and for Elena if she wants it. And for them? For them? A reality check. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Julian. Hey bro, just boarded. Champagne is flowing. Try not to be too jealous. Don't forget the mail. Attached was a selfie of him and my parents holding flutes of champagne, grinning like lottery winners. I didn't reply. I just forwarded the photo to Thomas with a note. Add this to the evidence file. The first week of their cruise was strangely peaceful. I was busy, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't stressed about money. Thomas called me on Tuesday. It's done. Green Thumb Holdings now owns the mortgage on 42 Oak Hill Lane. We also acquired the promissory note for your father's business loan from the secondary market. They were happy to unload a distressed asset. Distressed, I mused. That's one word for it. Also, I have a meeting set up for you with Mr. Henderson. Arthur Henderson, the billionaire real estate tycoon. He had been looking for a landscape architect for his new estate, and Thomas had quietly put my portfolio on his desk. The meeting was on Thursday. I drove to Henderson's temporary office in a rented high-rise. I didn't take a limo. I took my truck. I wore my best blazer, but I kept my work boots on. Mr. Henderson was a no-nonsense man in his 60s. He looked over my designs. You understand native plants, he observed. Most people try to force tropicals into this climate. You work with the land, not against it. Nature usually wins, Mr. Henderson, I said. I prefer to be on the winning side. He looked up, studying me. Thomas tells me you recently came into some capital. You don't need this job. I don't need the money, I corrected. But I need the work. This is who I am. Money doesn't change my hands. Henderson smiled. Good answer. You're hired. And Connor? If you ever need advice on how to handle sudden liquidity, my door is open. I know what it's like to have family come crawling. I appreciate that, sir. That validation from a man who built an empire meant more to me than the lottery win. My parents thought I was a failure because I wasn't a shark like Julian. But Henderson saw value in my integrity. On Friday, the first domino fell. I was at Grandma's house, meeting with a contractor to discuss fixing the roof and making the bathroom ADA accessible. My phone rang. It was my dad. Connor. His voice was tight, panicked. Hey Dad, how's the Caribbean? There's been a mistake. We're in Jamaica. We tried to pay for a shore excursion and dinner, and the card was declined. The bank says the account is frozen. I knew exactly why. As the new debt holder, I had instructed the collection agency, which acted on my behalf, to freeze assets due to non-payment. That's weird, I said, keeping my voice casual. Did you call the bank? I can't get through. It's an international number. Look, Julian's cards are acting up too. Some security glitch. Can you wire $500 to my Western Union account? Just to tide us over until I sort this out. $500. A drop in the bucket. I don't have $500 to spare, Dad, I said. Rent is due next week. You know how it is. Connor, this is an emergency. We're stuck at the port. Ask Julian, I suggested. He's the millionaire, right? Surely he has cash. Julian didn't bring cash. He hates carrying it. Connor, please, just put it on your credit card. I cut up my credit card, Dad, trying to be fiscally responsible. Like you always taught me. You useless. He started, then cut himself off. Fine, we'll figure it out. He hung up. I looked at the contractor. So, can we start on the ramp on Monday? Sure thing, Connor. I took a picture of the house. Just me, standing on the porch, holding a sledgehammer. I posted it to my Instagram story, the one I knew Julian checked obsessively to see if I was screwing up. Caption: Home renovation project starting soon. Restoring the legacy. I knew they would see it. I knew they would panic. Sure enough, within an hour, my phone started blowing up. Missed call. Mom, 3. Missed call. Julian, 5. Missed call. Dad, 2. Then the text from Aunt Marlene came through on the family group chat, which she had accidentally forgotten to leave. Marlene, did anyone hear? Someone in our town won the $100 million Mega Millions. Bought the ticket at the gas station on 4th Street. Isn't that where Linda bought the tickets? I smiled. Marlene was playing her part perfectly. The group chat exploded. Uncle Bob. No way. $100 million? Cousin Sarah. That's insane. Then a direct message from Mom. Mom, Connor, that ticket I gave you, you still have it, right? I waited 30 minutes before replying. Me, yes. Mom, check the numbers. Now, me, why? It was just a joke gift, right? Appropriate for my situation. Mom, Connor, check the numbers. Me, I'm busy working. I'll check later. By evening, I had 79 missed calls. The desperation was palpable. They were trapped on a ship, cards declined. Hearing rumors that the son they mocked might be a multimillionaire, and seeing him holding a sledgehammer at the house they had secretly mortgaged. It was psychological warfare, and I was winning. I sent one final message to the group chat. Me, everyone needs to be on a video call tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have important news about the house and the lottery. Family meeting. Mom will be there. Dad will find Wi-Fi. Julian, better be good news, bro. I went to bed early that night. I slept like a baby. Saturday, 8 p.m. I set up my laptop in my office. I had arranged the background carefully. Behind me was a whiteboard covered in architectural drawings. But more importantly, piles of legal documents were stacked neatly on the desk. I logged into the Zoom call. Faces popped up instantly. My parents and Julian were crowded around a laptop, presumably in the ship's business center. They looked sweaty and stressed. The tropical sunset behind them looked mocking in contrast to their anxious faces. Elena was in the background, looking out a window detached. Connor, Mom practically shrieked. We've been trying to call you for 24 hours. Why aren't you answering? I've been busy, Mom, I said. My voice was calm, authoritative. I wasn't the son asking for approval anymore. I was the CEO of this meeting. Did you check the ticket? Dad demanded. Marlene said the winner was from our town. Was it us? Us, I repeated. I thought you gave the ticket to me. We're family, Julian snapped. Stop playing games, Connor. Did you win or not? I leaned back in my chair. Yes, I won. The scream that came out of my mother's mouth was ear-splitting. Oh my God. Oh my God. We're rich. Gerald, we're rich. Dad slumped back in his chair, relief washing over him. Thank God. Connor, son, that is incredible news. How much? 100 million, I said. Cash option is about 62 million. 60 million, Julian breathed, his eyes wide. The calculator behind his eyes was already working. Okay, bro, listen. You need professional management. I know tax shelters, I know offshore accounts. Don't sign anything until I get back. We can pool this with my Miami project and double it in 2 years. Julian, I interrupted. Stop. I'm just trying to help. You don't know how to handle that kind of money. Actually, I do, I said. I've already hired a lawyer. Thomas Smith. Thomas. Dad frowned. He's retired. And he's too conservative. You need a shark. I have enough sharks in this family, I said. Before we talk about the winnings, there are some other financial matters we need to discuss. What matters? Mom asked, impatient. Transfer us some money so we can get off this ship. Our cards are frozen. I know, I said. I froze them. Silence. Absolute silence. You, what? Dad whispered. I shared my screen. A document appeared. This, I said, pointing to the cursor, is the promissory note for your business loan, Dad. $180,000. Defaulted. I clicked next. This is the collateral agreement. 42 Oak Hill Lane. Grandma's house. Signed by you and Julian. Where did you get that? Julian stood up, his face turning red. That's confidential. Not anymore, I said. I bought the debt, Julian. I own the loan. I own the lien on Grandma's house. And since you are in default, I have initiated foreclosure proceedings against you. You can't do that, Dad yelled. I'm your father. And she's your mother. I roared. The calm veneer cracked, letting the fury shine through. You stole from a 90-year-old woman. You mortgaged the roof over her head to fund Julian's fake lifestyle. It was an investment. Julian shouted. I was going to pay it back. With what? I clicked again. With the money you embezzled from Dad's shop? Or the money you stole from investors in the Miami project? I put up the bank statements Thomas had acquired. The transfers to Chloe expenses. What is that? Elena spoke up. It was the first time she had turned around. She walked closer to the camera. Julian, what is Chloe expenses? Julian turned pale. It's a consultant, Elena. Don't listen to him. Here's a picture of your consultant, I said, displaying the photo of Julian kissing Chloe. The sound Elena made was heartbreaking. It was a gasp that turned into a sob. She looked at Julian, then slapped him. Hard. The sound echoed through the microphone. You bastard, she screamed. You told me we were broke because of the market. You told me we couldn't afford kids. Elena. Baby, wait. Don't touch me. My mother was sobbing now. Connor, please stop. Why are you doing this? You have $60 million. You can fix this. Just pay the debt and let's be a family again. Fix it. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Mom. You handed me a $2 ticket and told me that was all I was worth. You laughed at me. You let them mock me. It was a joke. No, it wasn't. It was the truth. It was how you really see me. Well, here is the truth, Mom. Family doesn't steal from 90-year-old women. Family doesn't cheat on their wives while living off their parents' retirement. I'm sorry, she wailed. We're sorry. You're not sorry you did it, I said cold. You're sorry you got caught. And you're sorry the gardener is the one holding the checkbook. So what happens now? Dad asked, his voice defeated. Here is the deal, I said. I have paid off the lien. The house is going into a trust for Grandma. You will never touch it again. Julian, I'm forwarding these documents to the state attorney general. You're going to face fraud charges. You're sending your brother to jail? Mom gasped. He sent himself to jail when he stole from investors. I'm just forwarding the mail. And Elena, I said, my voice softening, I've set aside a legal fund for you. If you want a divorce, the best lawyers in the state are paid for. I want it, Elena said, wiping her eyes. She glared at Julian. I'm done. Connor, please, Julian begged. I can't go to jail. I'm soft. I won't survive. You should have thought of that before you bet the house, I said. This is the moment that changed everything, I told them. This is when I take back control. I looked at the camera lens. Enjoy the rest of the cruise. You'll have to figure out how to pay the bill at the end. I'm not covering it. I ended the call. The screen went black. I sat there in the silence of my office. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in chaos. Julian tried to flee. When the ship docked in Miami, he tried to book a flight to the Cayman Islands. But the authorities were waiting. Turns out I wasn't the only one he had ripped off. 2 of his Miami investors had filed complaints weeks ago, and my evidence was the final nail in the coffin. He was arrested at customs. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs, wearing his linen cruise suit, made the local news. My parents came home a week later. They had to borrow money from Uncle Bob to pay their tab on the ship and fly coach home. I was waiting for them at Grandma's house. I had moved her back in 2 days prior. The ramp was finished. The garden was pruned. She was sitting on the porch, drinking tea. My dad's sedan pulled up. The Porsche had already been repossessed. My parents got out. They looked 10 years older. Defeated. Mom. Dad. I nodded. Can we see her? Dad asked, looking at the porch. You can say hello, I said, standing in the middle of the walkway. But you aren't going inside. And you aren't staying. This is my mother's house. Dad bristled, trying to summon some old authority. Actually, it belongs to the Rose Mitchell Trust now, I corrected. And I am the trustee. You have no legal right to be on this property without my permission. My mother looked at me with a mix of hatred and fear. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Humiliating us. I'm not enjoying it, Mom. I'm protecting her. I gestured to Grandma. You tried to take the only thing she had left. Grandma Rose stood up. She walked to the railing. She looked down at her son. Gerald, she said. Mama, I'm sorry. Dad started to cry. I was desperate. I was going to pay it back. You broke my heart, Gerald, she said softly. Not because you needed money, but because you thought I wouldn't give it to you if you just asked. You stole it, and you dragged that boy down with you. I don't know what to do, Dad wept. The shop is gone. The house. The bank is foreclosing on our house next week. I know, I said. I bought that debt too. Dad's head snapped up. Hope flickered in his eyes. You did? So we can stay. No, I said. I'm not evicting you immediately. I'm giving you 3 months, rent-free, to find a job, find an apartment, and start over. But the house is being sold to pay off your creditors. But you have millions, Mom screamed. You could buy us a mansion. I could, I agreed. But I won't, because if I fix this for you, you'll never learn. You'll just find another Julian to worship and another Connor to kick. You're a monster, she spat. No, Mom. I'm just the guy who knows the value of $1 and the value of a signature. I turned my back on them and walked up the steps to Grandma. I put my arm around her. Come on, Grandma. Let's go inside. It's getting chilly. We went inside and closed the heavy oak door. I watched through the peephole as my parents got back into their car and drove away. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like surgery. Painful, bloody, but necessary to cut out the rot so the healing could finally begin. It has been exactly 12 months since the day I watched my parents drive away from Grandma Rose's house. Their car loaded with the remnants of a life they could no longer afford. People often ask me if time heals all wounds. I tell them that time doesn't heal anything. It just gives you the space to build something new over the scar tissue. And that is exactly what I did. I built. Grandma's house, 42 Oak Hill Lane, is no longer just a house. It is a fortress of peace. I spent the first 6 months pouring money and sweat into that property. I didn't hire a fancy design firm. I did the landscape architecture myself. I wanted my grandmother to look out her window and see a world that loved her back. I designed a sensory garden specifically for her. I planted beds of lavender and rosemary right at wheelchair height, so she could brush her hands against them and smell the earth without bending down. I installed a koi pond with a gentle waterfall to drown out the noise of the street and the noise of the past. We call it the Rose Garden. Last Saturday was the official unveiling. It wasn't a private family affair. I opened it to the community. I wanted the neighbors, the ones who had whispered about the Vance family scandal, to see what we had created. The morning of the opening, I was in the kitchen making tea. The house smelled of lemon polish and fresh baking, a stark contrast to the scent of expensive, stale potpourri that used to choke the air in my parents' home. Grandma Rose wheeled herself in. She looked better than she had in years. The stress of losing her home had evaporated, replaced by the security of knowing she was safe. You're wearing that tie, she commented, eyeing my silk tie. It's a big day, Grandma. Mr. Henderson is coming. Arthur Henderson? She raised an eyebrow. Make sure you charge him double. He can afford it. I laughed. He's actually my biggest client now. We just closed on the Botanical Park project downtown. It's a multi-million-dollar contract. See, she sipped her tea. I told you, you didn't need the lottery. You just needed the weeds cleared out of your way so you could grow. That was the truth. The $100 million sat mostly untouched in a diversified portfolio managed by Thomas Smith's firm. I lived off the income from my landscape architecture business. The lottery money was a safety net, a war chest, but it wasn't my lifeblood. My work was. The party started at noon. The garden was filled with people. I saw old friends from high school, neighbors, and even some of my former teachers. Then I saw her. Elena. She was standing by the gate, looking hesitant. She wasn't wearing the designer clothes Julian used to force her into. She was wearing a simple sundress and sandals. She looked younger, lighter. I walked over to her. Elena, I didn't think you'd come. She offered a small, shy smile. I saw the invitation on Facebook. I wanted to see it. How are you? I'm good, she said, and for the first time in 10 years, I believed her. The divorce was finalized last week. I went back to my maiden name. I'm Elena Russo again. Congratulations, Elena Russo. I'm working, she continued, a spark of pride in her eyes. I got a job as a paralegal. Thomas actually wrote me a recommendation letter. I'm renting a small studio apartment near the courthouse. It's tiny, but it's mine. I pay the rent with my own salary. That sounds perfect, I said. She looked down at her hands. Connor, I wanted to thank you for the legal fund. I haven't touched most of it, but knowing it was there, it gave me the courage to leave. I was so scared of him. I thought I was trapped. You were never trapped, Elena. You just needed a door. I also wanted to apologize, she said, her voice dropping. For those years, I saw how they treated you. I saw the eye rolls, the comments about your job. I never joined in, but I never stopped it either. I was a coward. You were surviving, I said gently. Survival makes us do things we aren't proud of. But you're out now. She looked out at the garden, at Grandma Rose holding court with a group of ladies from her church. He wrote to me, you know, Julian. My muscles tightened. From prison. Yeah. He's awaiting sentencing for the fraud charges. He wanted me to sell my engagement ring to put money in his commissary account. She laughed. A dry, incredulous sound. Can you believe that? After everything. What did you do? I sold the ring, she said. I looked at her, surprised. And I donated the money to a women's shelter, she finished, grinning. I sent him the receipt. I threw my head back and laughed. Felt good. Felt clean. That is the best thing I've heard all year. Enjoy the party, Connor. You built something beautiful here. As she walked away, I felt a sense of closure. Elena was going to be okay. She was a survivor. Later that afternoon, Mr. Henderson arrived. He walked through the garden with the critical eye of a developer, nodding at the drainage systems and the plant choices. Impressive, Vance, he said. You know, I have a project coming up in Aspen. High altitude, difficult terrain. I need someone who understands the land. Interested? I'll send you a proposal on Monday, I said. Good man. He lowered his voice. I heard about your brother. 5 years. That's what the prosecutor is asking for. I nodded. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. It turns out the Miami project was just a swamp he bought for pennies and sold to investors as prime beachfront. And your parents? I looked toward the gate, half expecting them to show up and cause a scene, but the street was empty. They're existing, I said. I hadn't spoken to them in 6 months, but I knew where they were. Aunt Marlene kept me updated, though I never asked her to. They were living in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of town, a neighborhood they used to make fun of. Dad had found a job as a service manager at a used car dealership. It was a humiliating step down for a man who used to own his own shop, but it paid the bills. Mom was working the checkout counter at a grocery store. Marlene told me that the first time Mom had to scan groceries for one of her old country club friends, she had gone into the break room and cried for an hour, but she went back out. She had to. They had no safety net. No Julian to promise them millions. No Connor to fix the roof. They were finally living the reality they could afford. It's a hard lesson, Henderson said, watching my face. But necessary. Yeah. As the sun began to set, the guests started to leave. The golden hour light hit the stone path, making the garden look magical. I walked over to Grandma Rose. She was sitting by the koi pond, looking at her reflection in the water. Tired? I asked. A good tired, she said. Sit with me, Connor. I sat on the stone bench beside her wheelchair. I have something for you, she said. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small velvet pouch. I opened it. Inside was a heavy gold signet ring. It was old, the crest worn down by time. Grandpa's ring, I whispered. I hadn't seen it in 20 years. I thought Dad lost this. He didn't lose it, Grandma said sharply. I stole it back from him the day he tried to pawn it to buy Julian his first car. I've kept it hidden in my sewing kit ever since. She took the ring and placed it in my palm. Your grandfather wore this every day. He built this house wearing this ring. He wasn't a man of words, Connor. He was a man of action. He believed that you take care of your own, but you never let your own eat you alive. I miss him, I said. He would be proud of you, she said. Not because of the money, but because you had the courage to cut the cord. It takes a strong man to support his family, Connor. It takes a stronger one to stop enabling them. She looked me right in the eye. I knew, you know. Knew what? About the lottery ticket. Before the video call. I stared at her. How? I didn't tell anyone but Thomas and Marlene. I saw it, she chuckled softly. That night, after everyone left the dinner table, I saw you put it in your pocket, but I saw your face first. You had that look. The look your grandfather used to get when he had a winning poker hand but didn't want to spook the other players. And then, when you started fixing the roof before the money was officially announced, I knew. Why didn't you say anything? Because I wanted to see what you would do, she said. Money reveals character, Connor. If Julian had one, he would have bought a bigger boat and left me to rot in that nursing home. You won, and the first thing you did was build me a ramp. She patted my hand. You passed the test, my boy. You're the patriarch now. This ring belongs to you. I slipped the ring onto my finger. Fit perfectly. Thank you, Grandma. Now, she said, turning her chair toward the house. Help me inside. Wheel of Fortune is starting, and I feel lucky tonight. I pushed her wheelchair up the path, through the garden I had built, toward the house I had saved. The air was cool and crisp. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the shadow of my brother or the weight of my parents' expectations. I felt light. I'm sitting in my truck, parked on a bluff overlooking the town. It's an old Ford, the same one I drove to that Thanksgiving dinner a year ago. I could have bought a Ferrari. I could have bought a fleet of them. But I like this truck. It has my tools in the back. It smells like soil and hard work. It reminds me of who I am. The engine idles, a low rumble that vibrates through the steering wheel. Down below, the city lights are flickering on. Somewhere in that grid of lights, in a small apartment complex near the highway, my parents are eating dinner. Maybe meatloaf, maybe leftovers. They are living a small life. I don't hate them anymore. Hate takes too much energy. It's like carrying a bag of concrete around your neck. Eventually, it just drags you down. I feel indifferent. A notification pops up on my phone screen. Dad, happy birthday, son. Hope you're doing well. Dad. I stare at the message. It's my birthday. I had actually forgotten. 35 today. In the past, a text like that would have sent me spiraling. I would have analyzed it for hidden meaning. Does he want money? Is he trying to manipulate me? Does he actually care? Now, I just see it for what it is. A text message. I don't reply. I don't feel the need to. I don't owe them my time, my thoughts, or my forgiveness. Forgiveness is a gift, and right now I'm not in a giving mood. Maybe one day, maybe never, and that's okay. I put the phone down and look at the passenger seat. There's a blueprint there for the Aspen project. Beside it is a cooler with a slice of cake Grandma Rose made for me. I take a bite of the cake. It's chocolate, dense and rich, just the way I like it. People always ask me the same question when they hear this story. Did the money change you? They want to hear a dramatic answer. They want to hear that I bought an island or that I lost my soul. But the truth is simpler. The money didn't change me. The money unmasked everyone else. It acted like a chemical developer in a darkroom. It brought out the hidden images that were there all along. It showed my parents' greed. It showed Julian's corruption. It showed Elena's resilience. And it showed my own strength. I spent 34 years waiting for permission to be the man I wanted to be. I thought I needed my father's approval. I thought I needed to be as loud and flashy as Julian to be successful. I was wrong. Success isn't about the Porsche in the driveway. It's about the peace in the house. It's about knowing that if everything burned down tomorrow, you have the skills to build it back up with your own two hands. I put the truck in gear. I have a date tonight, not with a supermodel or a gold digger, but with Sarah. We're going to a hole-in-the-wall Italian place that makes the best lasagna in the state. She doesn't care about the millions. She was there when I was just the guy with the dirt under his fingernails. I drive down the hill, leaving the overlook behind. The road ahead is dark, but my headlights cut through it, bright and steady. I'm Connor Vance. I'm a landscape architect. I'm a grandson, and for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Friends, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, from that crumpled $2 ticket to this quiet moment in my truck, I want to leave you with one final thought. We spend so much of our lives accepting the price tags other people put on us. My parents priced me at $2. They priced my brother at $13,000. For years, I believed them. I walked around carrying that discount sticker on my forehead, thinking I was worth less because I didn't fit their mold of success. But here's the hard truth. Your value is not determined by how your family treats you. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. There is a difference. We are taught that we must honor our parents and support our siblings no matter what. But blind loyalty to toxic people isn't love, it's self-destruction. I had to learn that setting boundaries isn't an act of war. It's an act of self-respect. Taking back grandma's house wasn't revenge. It was justice. Cutting my parents off financially wasn't cruelty. It was the only way to stop them from drowning themselves and dragging me down with them. If you are the invisible one in your family, if you are the one they only call when they need something, I want you to hear this. You don't need a lottery win to break free. You have the power to walk away from the table where respect is no longer being served. You can build your own table. You can plant your own garden. Now, I have a request for you. This story was personal and it wasn't easy to share. But I shared it because I know I'm not the only one. I want to know what you took away from this. Please, go to the comments right now and tell me, what is the one lesson from my story that hit you the hardest? Or, simply comment the word good if you believe that standing up for yourself is the ultimate form of self-love. I will be reading every single comment. I want to see your names. I want to know who is in this community of survivors and builders. Thank you for listening. Thank you for seeing me. And remember, don't let anyone tell you you're a $2 ticket when you know you're the jackpot. See you in the comments.